Hey guys, we are joined by Alon, CEO for SSV Network. Thanks for joining us, Alon.
Yeah.
I would like you to start by explaining a little bit of what SSV is and what's kind of your role in this big ecosystem of staking. Since you're for me, one of the most intriguing and complex technology in the space, I would like you to briefly talk about it.
Sure. So SSV is a DVT network. DVT stands for Distributed Validators. It's a technology that started out life in the Ethereum Foundation with the idea that they wanted to enable a validator on Ethereum to not run by one entity, but rather by a cluster, by a group of entities. And so DVT does exactly that. SSV is just a DVT network. That means that we have a network of interconnected operators governed by a smart contract. And it's permissionless. Anyone can come and run validators on top of SSV, select whatever operators they want. And every single validator that runs on SSV is run by a committee or a cluster. And so if one of those operators gets compromised or fails or go offline, the validator stays intact, continues to run. And so that's kind of the fundamental principles of DVT. SSV has been around for almost a year on mainnet. And so we've brought that, we were the first ones to bring that into mainnet and into kind of full-scale adoption. Today, SSV is managing 1.7 million ETH, 1,100 operators on mainnet today, so it's quite a remarkable adoption throughout the last year.
Yeah, actually, I was going to segue with that. Like, I remember you guys were at Staking Summit last year.
Yep.
I did your workshop to set up a node, right? It was really cool, and I'm really not that used to run node. I've never done it, and it was super simple, like with all the tutorials, and it was set. Of course, it was not on mainnet at the time, but still was a really cool experience to do. And I was going to ask you how the last year has gone, but you have already replied that you guys have done amazing. Do you think from this point forward, what is the kind of the path for you to grow?
Yeah, sure. So we've been working hard in 2024 to kind of scale SSV as much as possible, and with primarily this kind of vision in mind to become a primary interface. That's at least what we call it internally. The idea is that we want to be the interface with which developers across the entire staking ecosystem, if you will, interact with SSV. So that means that if you any type of staking application, you'll build it on SSV just because it's a better infrastructure. And so to that end, we've been working a lot on scale, performance, and features that enable that. So for example, by the end of the month, we'll have the first ever fork for SSV. It's a major improvement that's going to reduce by 90% the requirements, the CPU and memory requirements for an SSV node. That means it's going to be 90% cheaper to run. It means that it's going to be much more scalable and cost effective. And it will prepare SSV for the next 2 or 3 million ETH that will come to SSV. So that's, for example, one example, and we've also been collaborating with a lot of others. One of the things is that as SSV scales, we want to be as aligned as possible with Ethereum itself. And Ethereum was always very hard on and very pro multi-client approach, right? It's something fundamental, the idea that you don't trust a single implementation, especially if you're becoming a very big protocol, and we took that to heart. And so the past 6 months we've been working very hard with an amazing team from Sigma Prime. Sigma Prime is one of the best Beacon chain implementers out there. And so we've worked with them, and they will be the second client for SSV. They already started to develop, and that's a major milestone again for adoption. If we're looking at being a primary interface, one of the things people should ask about is, okay, what are the points of failure when using SSV? And definitely a multi-client approach is something that we need to develop. And so both that and obviously working on optimizations for the protocol itself, we've set out the kind of the course and the roadmap for 2025.
Great answer, and pretty big expectations for that. As far as I understand from what you've been telling me, your protocol is more directed to developers to run these nodes than retail people. How would you pitch it to a developer to use your infrastructure? What were the advantages of it?
Sure. So ultimately, developers want to use the best infrastructure they can. And by best, I mean it's easy to use, have a large ecosystem of other developers they can tap into and ask questions, good performance, and so on and so forth. And so this is exactly how we've designed SSV. It's very easy to onboard. You have 1,100 different operators you can choose from, and you can obviously add your own. And so in that sense, I think that if you're a developer and you want to build on the best infrastructure you can, then you should start building on SSV immediately, because legacy infrastructure where you run a bunch of different validators on a single entity, if that entity fails, your validator fails, that's not a good approach, nor for scalability, nor as an infrastructure kind of provider. So move to a multi-operator type of infrastructure. SSV is the biggest DVT implementer out there, so definitely check out SSV. And another point is that the SSV DAO has committed itself to onboarding as many of those developers as possible, with the notion of that Ethereum as a whole needs to move to DVT. And so even a year ago, the SSV DAO has committed what we call the incentivized mainnet program. Basically, every active validator that runs on SSV gets up to 30% boost in rewards, obviously with the intention of having a lot of people move into SSV. We strongly believe this is a key feature and a key incentive to adopt DVT from day one. And so if you are a developer, those two things should definitely be super important. One is the infrastructure you're using, and the second is just more rewards.
That's the point, right? That's the point of running a validator. Yeah, very compelling argument, I would say. One of the things that I would want to focus on is, like, you obviously know a lot about DVT technology, and you probably know a lot of other technologies that could compete with it.
Yeah.
Do you see anything in this space that could offer the same level of security and decentralization as DVT that can eventually become a thing?
So as DVT, I don't think so. DVT is really, there's two alternatives to running a validator. Either you run it in a DVT setup, or you run it as a single entity. And so in that case, in that sense, there is no competition, and potentially in the future there will be, and we'll definitely adopt it if it's worthwhile. But within DVT, SSV is by far the biggest one. So definitely, if you're making that move it to SSV.
Perfect. So now a broader question about the summit. You were in the summit last year.
Yeah.
What are you expecting to gain from the summit and to bring home with you?
I think throughout the year, there are a bunch of summits where they're big enough that you can really meet a lot of the different people and kind of partners that on a regular basis you're working with. And so Staking Summit and in general, kind of this whole DevCon 1 or 2 week period is definitely that time. I think there's probably one of the three biggest kind of events of the year. So for me, it's really the option to kind of talk with people, meet face-to-face people that we usually talk over Zoom or whatever. And so that's really kind of the main thing. And obviously, you have the opportunity also to have a booth and kind of appeal to maybe a random audience that you would not have kind of encountered throughout the day.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah. And any keynotes you're looking forward to, or anyone you are looking forward to meet?
Yeah. So I think DevCon itself, at its core, it's a developer kind of conference. So there's a lot of different things that are really interesting for us. So for obviously the main thing that's going to happen to Ethereum in the next, I would say, 6 months is the Pectra fork. And so we're definitely looking forward to learning more and hearing more about when this is going to happen, how it will exactly happen, because there's a lot of kind of uncertainty around it. So that's point number one. And point number two is really kind of the long-term future of Ethereum. There's a lot of different proposals, a lot of different approaches that people talk throughout the year. And so having the opportunity to talk face-to-face with those people, maybe hear a talk they give, I think that's interesting.
Okay. I'd like to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
If you want to share where people can find more about SSV Network, please go ahead.
Just join us at ssv.network. We are on Discord, Twitter, Telegram, wherever everyone is at, basically. And so reach out if you're a developer, if you're a staker. Yeah, definitely. Check us out.
Okay, Alan, thanks a lot, and I hope to see you again next year.
Thank you very much.